So there are a lot of things, of course, going on in the application. There are a lot of things that people want for the application. I mentioned in the introductory remarks that, as you would imagine, there are many different aspects, many different activities that go into getting development into the application. So what we're going to have going on right now is some of the members that have been involved in working on different aspects of the application, or even just like starting to think about how different parts of the application can be improved, are going to be talking about things that they're working on. Beyond just the application itself, there's also the potential of integrating ArchivesSpace with other applications. And so one of our groups is going to be talking about work that they've specifically been doing on making it easier for people to understand how and why to integrate with ArchivesSpace and some of the integrations that have been done. So I'll just introduce all of our speakers right now. They'll each be speaking in order, and then there'll be time for questions at the end of all three of the presentations. The three presentations will happen, and then we'll take questions all at the end for any of the presentations. After the presentations themselves, we have time set up for people to then go and talk. We're calling them focus groups. You could call them breakouts. Whatever it is, we've provided time for you to go and discuss these specific issues with the person that's talking about them, with each other, and ideally brainstorm some ideas for the future as well. The staff interface group, and I'll mention this at the end too, but just keep an eye on where you're going to be moving afterwards. We're going to do the breakouts all in this room. The staff interface group is going to be back in that corner over here. The integrations group is going to be close to the camera here. And the agents module folks will be closest to the coffee in the back there. So thinking about strategically where you want to move once these presentations are over. So I'll introduce Lydia Tang from Michigan State University, who's going to be leading an effort to make recommendations for improvements to the staff interface of ArchivesSpace. Cory Nimer, who's representing the group that's been working on a specification for a pretty substantial revamp of the agents module of ArchivesSpace. And Max Eckard and Patrick Galligan from the Technical Advisory Council, who are working with the integration sub-team specifically and can tell you everything you want to know about integrations with ArchivesSpace. So with that, I'll turn it over to Lydia.
Thank you. Hello. So the staff interface working group is in its very early stages at this point. A couple weeks ago, Christine DeBella sent out an email on the member listserv for a call for volunteers, and I was selected to chair this group. So the charge of this group is to review and dedupe and select these JIRA issues that are already being documented, as well as research and create our recommendations from member input. To join this working group, you can either use this QR code or contact Christine DeBella. You can also contribute suggestions through JIRA and also through a Google form. This Google form should be hopefully a low barrier entry for using this for contributing selections. Wow, sorry about that. Okay, these specifications are going to be drafted in our Google Drive, and so I've currently set up this Google Drive, and it has Google Docs within it. In our focus group, we have some pages that are selected against the wall. Please feel free to write in some ideas that you're interested in for improvement of the staff interface, as well as if you're able to log into this Google Drive, you can just drop it and type directly into the Google Docs there. So we will take questions at the end, but this word cloud right here is some of the ideas that we're thinking about looking into. So we'll be addressing issues of labels, of navigation, organization, visual layout in general, and I'm really looking forward to your input throughout this process. Thank you.
My name is Cory Nimer. I'm the University Archivist at Brigham Young University. I was talked into joining this effort a couple of years ago by Brad Westbrook while he was program manager of the ArchivesSpace program. And Sue Luftschein joined us a year ago, I think, in this effort. So before I was the University Archivist at BYU, I was a Technical Services Archivist and deeply involved with authority work maintenance at our institution. And so coming into ArchivesSpace, probably just after the RDA expansion of authority control elements, I was somewhat disappointed with the available functionality and made the mistake of putting in a feature request for this. So we had a few goals, though, beyond just expansion in putting together the specification. Those four were standards compliance, and I'll go into all of these in a little bit more detail, but standards compliance, which included expanded ability to describe entities, updated imports and exports to support those new elements, and then integration with authority services. Sorry. In terms of standard compliance, if you've gone through the specification, you probably already know that our major focus was on EACCPF. While the ArchivesSpace agents module currently includes a number of elements from EACCPF, there's quite a bit more that could be added. Unsupported elements currently include mandate, legal status, occupations, associated places, and so on and so on. Most of these elements are also represented in the MARC authorities format. And while the LCNAF plugin has been implemented and is widely used, it just didn't feel like a lot of that data made it into the application, again, because there weren't places to put in. So that first goal was to try to support a robust implementation of EACCPF and the MARC authorities format. Moving into expanded description, we tried to cover a few different areas with that. The first is control. The EACCPF format includes a wide variety of fields for managing that content. If you've used the MARC authorities format, just looking at the controlled or the fixed fields at the top of the record, you know there's a lot of control information available, and so we've tried to expand that. Oh, I didn't realize this wasn't showing up there. I'm going to need some help, Christine. Did that? Oh, that worked. Sorry. Thanks. Okay. So again, the control field includes a number of new elements. This is a copy of the wireframe from the specification documentation, including a number of fields from the EACCPF control, as well as the MARC authorities format fixed field sections. Looking at identity, it's largely the same, but again with some expansions. We were concerned about supporting parallel names, as well as additional information about the language script and transliteration method that was used for an individual name as it's used within the application. The biggest expansion, though, is description, which again includes things in this wireframe that are already in the application, like dates of existence and contact details. But then tying into the subjects module to support places, occupations, functions, associated subjects, and so on and so on. The final section that we wanted to try to beef up was the relations section, which currently exists, but again, adding more support for associated places and other things that are available in EACCPF, but not elsewhere, but not in the current version of ArchivesSpace. Beyond adding data elements, we also wanted to improve import and export mapping, as well as record merging functionality. As an amateur genealogist myself, I use Ancestry and Family Search quite a bit, and so I was very interested personally in being able to merge records while being able to select individual data elements within those two records as part of the merging process. We're currently a merger between two sort of merges relationships but dumps all of the data from one of those records. This would allow more granular selection of data elements from the two records for the merged record that you are creating. And then finally, we were interested in some level of integration, and the two services that we aimed at in the specification were LCNAF and SNAC. Those were not necessarily the same level of integration, but for both of those, we were looking at synchronization. If you're going to treat those external data services as your master record and have automated updates of your local record, including that in the specification, as well as submission of data to SNAC. Some of those details with SNAC are currently in the process of being worked out, and we'll continue to work on that. But with all of these things, we're really interested in getting feedback. The specification was made available to the community, I think, the beginning of last month. I think it will still be open for comments into early September before this moves toward development. But we'd like to make sure that everyone's represented, and we'll have more discussion in the focus group portion of this. But a lot of the questions that we've had are about reusing existing functionality within the application while trying to support as much as possible of the available standards. And sometimes we've erred on one side and sometimes on the other. But we're very interested in your feedback, either here in person today or by email. Those comments could be sent to me directly. Brad and Sue are working together with me on this, but at this point I'll just be the one writing questions. So, and I guess we'll take questions at the end. Thanks.
Hello, everybody. My name is Max Eckard. I'm the archivist for digital curation at the Bentley Historical Library and the chair of the ArchivesSpace integration subteam. And I'm here today with Patrick to just talk about some of the work that the integration subteam has been doing, specifically giving you an update on some resources that we recently developed and kind of put out there on the web that have to do with just explaining what integrations are, what integrations have been happening, why you might want to integrate with ArchivesSpace with other applications, and then Patrick will talk a little bit about some steps, how you can get started doing those integrations. If you're not familiar, so there's the Technical Advisory Council, and Integration Subteam is one of the newest subteams on that council. And this is kind of what we do. We support the ArchivesSpace community by taking a transparent approach to documenting the integrations of systems with the ArchivesSpace application. We do things like track current integrations as best we can and communicate their progress. Create resources, which is what we're here to talk about today, to assist members of the ArchivesSpace community with their integration work. Being a liaison between those developing integrations, the ArchivesSpace program team, and the ArchivesSpace community, and then for specific integrations as necessary, determining scope, helping with specification writing, testing things. So that's sort of what we do, and we have a couple of us here today. As I said, Patrick and I are here, Cory's here, Dustin is here. If you have questions about, he's from Atlas, so if you have questions about ArchivesSpace Aeon, he's the guy to go to. Cory Smith, who I think is here at SA, but I'm not sure if I've seen her today. Jason Leffler, and Terry Catapano. So that's the integration subteam. So I wanted to just briefly say what integrations are. Patrick sent out a link on Twitter to all this stuff because we realized kind of in hindsight that these are really hard to read, but there's some links to the wiki. So integrations, and a big thank you to Brad Westbrook for helping to come up with this definition. A functional coupling between ArchivesSpace, or in this case, ArchivesSpace, and another software application so that they act as a coordinated whole. And so, as you might imagine, this can happen in a lot of different ways that range in complexity. And in fact, we went a little crazy trying to define all the different levels of complexity, but we won't get into that here. But a defining characteristics of all kind of systems integration is communication between the systems, or seamless data flow without, ideally, without a manual intermediary step between systems. So here I'm talking about data and metadata flowing back and forth between two different software applications. And then, because we're trying to be community-oriented, for our purposes, as much as possible, integration should also be generalizable, so they're not, specific to an institution, but can work for other members of the community as well. There are a couple of these that are already going on. You may have heard of some of these. There's a number of digital preservation integrations, for example, between, this is, for example, one between Archivematica and ArchivesSpace, which allows you to pair Archivematica digital objects with ArchivesSpace resources, and then automatically generates digital objects in ArchivesSpace. That one's from the Rockefeller Archive Center. There's an integration between ArchivesSpace, Archivematica, and DSpace that improves the creation and reuse of metadata among the three applications and streamlines the ingest and deposit of digital archives into DSpace. There's a similar integration with Preservica, which synchronizes metadata and a hierarchy between ArchivesSpace and Preservica during and at any time after ingest, and that one's from Yale. There's some discovery integrations. There's one between ArchivesSpace and Drupal, which periodically polls the ArchivesSpace API for newly created and changed archival objects and digital objects and publishes them to Drupal. Actually, I heard Jason Leffler from representing the American Academy in Rome talk about this yesterday. It's pretty slick. There's one between Jekyll and ArchivesSpace, which is allows you to create a static website for archival description in ArchivesSpace. And then finally, there's this ArchivesSpace and collection space integration. I also heard Linda Hawking from the Litchfield Historical Society talk about this yesterday, and it's also very cool. It provides a single search portal for material that's in ArchivesSpace and collection space, and it's really useful if you're one of those like museum archives institutions. So this is just a little sampling. This is not everything that's going on, but it's the ones that we're most aware of. And really briefly, I just wanted to also talk about why you might want to do this. And I could talk for a while about this, but I'll just try to keep it pretty brief. So ArchivesSpace, obviously we are all using ArchivesSpace here. It supports everybody's daily activities when it comes to archival information management. However, it's often only one software that you use in your day-to-day work among a whole larger software ecosystems, and so lots of institutions also maintain other applications. And the employment of all these different systems can have a negative impact on staff efficiency, especially if you're doing things like copying and pasting metadata from one system to another, or rekeying the same information between two systems. But it doesn't have to, and that's where kind of system integration comes in. Integrating disparate systems allows institutions to create efficient workflows, minimize the duplication of work, and maximize the overall benefit of the entire set of applications. And so you can just kind of let ArchivesSpace handle all the archival information management, something like Archivematic or Preservica handle digital preservation, and have them linked together, and you get the best of both worlds. So, yeah, I'll hand it over to Patrick.
So yeah, what Max didn't mention is that we have resources online, the why and how. I'm going to try and go through a little bit of the steps that we think somebody might want to ideally look at before really embarking on a full-scale integration project. So, step one, check to see if someone's already done it first. It might seem pretty obvious, but if somebody's done this work, we're going to try and make it available online as soon as we know about it. So you can go to the ArchivesSpace integrations page on the website. It should be there. If it's not, yell at us and we'll get it up. But definitely don't want to have people do the work that someone already has done. So 2, reach out to the community. We are an open source community, and you're probably not the only one that's worried about like doing this work or getting this integration work done. We are here to help support you, and that means like putting people in contact with each other if they need to. We'd like for people to work together and not have to do development burden and work on their own. So 3, once you have this idea kind of set up and you have people that might want to work on it, we suggest defining the requirements or creating a specification for integrations. We've seen some really good ones and we have some examples put up online on our page for how to integrate. Specifically, we enjoyed the ArcLight requirements and specifications, the Archivematica appraisal tab requirements, some minimum viable product spec markups, things like that is what we'd like to see and makes it easier to get something developed with the help from ArchivesSpace in the future. So then design and develop actually according to your specifications that you've put out there. Just, try and follow that as close as possible because that's what you've gotten community feedback on. Test your integration, make sure it works before trying to go live. And then finally, go live. So yay, you're live. And then announce it to the greater community. We'll get it up on our website. We'll give you some press about it, like get everybody excited and give you some free, like, yeah, these guys are great. So this is some of like the different methodologies for integration with ArchivesSpace. What we've seen a lot is using the API, which is great. It's really easy. That's generally what most people like to do with their integrations. There are a few like existing SDKs out there for ArchivesSpace integration. I'll just call out 3 right now. So there's, for Go, Caltech Archives has an integration toolkit, and ArchivesSpace Hackers Toolkit and ArchivesSpace REST API Client are both in Node. And then there's an Agent Archives toolkit through Python that was developed by Artifactual Systems for use in Archivematica that could also be very helpful. We try and get people to follow the common standards and practices of the general archival community. So we would suggest trying to follow, the common metadata and content standards that are on this list: DAX, EAD, premise write statements, marks, mods, etc. If there's more, like SNAC that needs, or EACPF that needs to get involved, that's great. And if you're not quite ready for integration yet, there's not a problem. We would suggest, investing in learning and trying to help, but if you need to help finding resources, if you don't have any developers, but you need help finding developers or somebody that has that experience, please contact us. We're here to help. That's what we say on our slides. It's what we're supposed to be doing. We don't hear enough from people, is I think what I want to say. We want to hear more from people about what they want to do and how we can help them do it. So thank you. And then I guess we have some time for questions.
So any of our speakers are fair game. Does anyone have any questions that you want to ask about staff interface, agents, or integrations? And do come up to the mic, please.
Hi, this is for the integrations. I admit to not having looked very closely at the Drupal integration. I was just wondering if you could speak more to that.
Well, I can give you an idea of what it does, but I think Jason Leffler would be the person to talk to, since he's the one that's involved in the development. I did see him talk about it yesterday. So essentially, Drupal they have kind of a unique use case where they have, because it's the American Academy in Rome, they have like researchers that speak English, researchers that speak Italian, and so the idea behind the integration was kind of to have basically Drupal display like finding aids and digital objects in Drupal. So it's pulling things from ArchivesSpace and it's querying and listening for newly updated description that you have in ArchivesSpace, and Drupal is pulling it from ArchivesSpace and displaying it. And the idea behind it is to give people who, because there's a wide kind of Drupal community of developers, so people who want to kind of have a little bit more ease customizing the interface, and then also like multilingual support, which you definitely have to ask him about that because it was a little over my head. Just allow you not to be a developer, to work like no Ruby, for example, to make a customization to the way you're displaying finding aids, but instead use a much more ubiquitous Drupal, which is, yeah, you should talk to Jason.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Other questions?
So we're looking at agents, which is really great. Do we have a timeline for subject headings? Because I would really love some cross-references. Brad, you're leading that one.
We haven't, I've put in a couple of feature requests related to subjects as well. It isn't the focus of this work, but I do also hope that it gets taken up at some point soon.
And it is, if you look on our roadmap, it is prioritized. So the agents revamp is prioritized for this year. So we are hoping to see progress in the application very soon. As Cory described it, like there are a lot of moving parts to this. There are a lot of pieces to this, and there may be some things that roll out relatively soon, and there may be other things that take a little bit longer, particularly when it's the change in the data model, and wanting to make sure that kind of people are really on board with those changes, making sure that it's been considered from all the angles that it needs to be. Brad and Cory and Sue have put an incredible amount of work and thoughtful consideration into this, but we really, at this stage, want to hear from all of you. But the agents in general is prioritized for development this year, and you'll start to see some pieces rolling out sooner rather than later. If no one wants to ask any other questions in front of the big group, then we can start to move into the focus groups where you can talk to our speakers more directly and talk with each other more directly about these issues. So as I said, the staff interface group is going to be taking over this part of the room back there. The pieces of paper on the wall are related to the staff interface focus group. So if you're interested in participating in that, head to that part of the room. If you're interested in participating in discussing integrations and other considerations related to integrations, head for the tables closest to the camera over here and take over that area. And then if you're interested in talking about agents, kind of those few tables closest to the coffee at the back of the room, closest to the back of the room are going to be agents tables. We're putting some tabletop signs on the tables that we're designating for this, but those are the general parameters of where you go. We have about a half an hour to talk in groups about these things. You're welcome to break for lunch when you're done talking, or you're welcome to continue your discussions over lunch. The program will pick up back again at 1 o'clock in a few different spaces, including this space. But if you have any questions about where to go for lunch, where to get food, we can help you at the registration table over there, or come up to a program staff member.